Welcome to Death Holler. Do you like scary movies? Welcome to Season 3, Slash or Pass. There will be laughter, tears, tender moments.
Jason, my special boy.
But most of all, screams. Remember, when you're in Death Holler, listener discretion is always advised. We hope you have a killer time.
So, movie discussion and this one is the best sequel, and I will fight people over this. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors from '87.
I love the name.
Yeah, it's really good. Tagline: If you think you're ready for Freddy, think again.
I mean, I know they just wanted to throw Ready Freddy in the tagline, and that's fine, but think again.
Part 1's always going to have the best tagline.
Yeah.
That tagline was amazing. This one was actually written by Wes Craven, along with Bruce Wagner and Frank Darabont. Music by Angelo Badalamenti and directed by Chuck Russell. Made on a budget of $4 million, it made $44.8 million.
Wow.
So they're consistently earning, what is that, like 10 times their budget back? That's pretty good. Principal players, we have Patricia Arquette playing Kristen Parker as our final girl in this one, which is funny because her brother, David, would later go on to also star in a Wes Craven series.
Nice.
She was in Severance, Medium, Smoking Hot and True Romance. I mean, she's playing a prostitute, granted, but still, she is very hot in that movie. Stigmata, Little Nicky.
I love Little Nicky.
Ed Wood and Lost Highway.
Nice.
Robert Englund, again, as Freddy. This time playing the Nightmare Demon, son of 1,000 the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs. 100 maniacs. That
was a good add to the storyline.
Yeah, it actually was. I did appreciate this is the best sequel. So Heather Langenkamp, again, is Nancy Thompson, all grown up and high on Hypnosil, and she's the counselor to the other kids.
Hot counselor.
Yeah, she looks good in this movie. And that little bit of gray hair that she got in the first movie, it looked goofy then, but she grew into it in this one.
Yep.
John Saxon's back as Donald Thompson, cop and Nancy's dad. Bradley Gregg plays Philip Anderson, who likes to make puppets. He was in Stand By Me, Class of '99, and Fire in the Sky. Penelope Sudrow plays Jennifer Caulfield, who likes to burn herself with cigarettes after she smokes. Jennifer Rubin plays Taryn White, who's a recovering addict, a punk rocker, and is sadly sexually harassed and possibly abused while she is in a mental institution for these kids. Ira Hayden plays Will Stanton, who's disabled, possibly due to Freddy, and I'll get into that later about how dark this movie really is when you think about the undertones. Nerdy Dungeon Master. Ken Sagos plays Roland Kincaid, who's tough and short-tempered, and put into solitary confinement due to his violent outburst.
Wow.
Rodney Eastman plays Joel Crucell, mute and socially awkward. Craig Wasson plays Neil Gordon, who's the psychiatrist. Lawrence Fishburne plays Max, the orderly at the mental hospital. I fondly know him as Cowboy Curtis, but he's also Morpheus. And playing basically the same character in the John Wick movies. I don't know if you've seen that. Somebody get this man a gun. And then Nan Martin playing Sister Mary Helena, but also, and I put Mary in this, but it's Amanda Kruger, who is Freddy's dead mother and a ghost. Synopsis. Set years after the original film, the children on Elm Street are seemingly committing suicide at alarming rates. Kristen, a teen with the power to pull others into her dreams, is the latest of Freddy's victims to be admitted to the nut house for an attempted suicide. Quote. Her arrival is followed shortly thereafter by the return of Nancy Thompson, all grown up and ready to treat others for the debilitating nightmares that she suffers from. Will Nancy be able to help this new group of kids, or will they suffer the same fate as her friends? Freddy turns into a graboid. Too much TV will fry your brains, and drugs are bad, okay? If you think you'll get out alive, you must be dreaming.
Shut up.
Body counting this back down again to 6, although there are good ones in this one.
Yes.
Counted, 34 non-counted. Philip Anderson has his tendons ripped out and then walked off of a building as a puppet.
That was my ultimate kill. Sorry.
It was mine too.
Okay.
I'm just going to go ahead
That
and say
looked painful as fuck.
that kid sold that. I mean,
Yes.
like the look on his face, that reason, this movie horrified me as a kid, and it was that scene in particular that did it.
Yes, and watching him in not real life, but like when his roommate saw him sleepwalking, he was selling it there too.
Yep. He had the look of pain on his face, even if they couldn't see his tendons ripped out like he
Yeah.
was seeing them in his dream. Jennifer Caulfield has her head smashed through a TV. Taryn White, she gets the Stu Macher Award for that one.
She does.
Taryn White is injected with a lethal overdose of drugs. Will Stanton is stabbed in the chest with though Heather Langenkamp will return in one of the future movies we'll discuss, being stabbed in the gut with finger knives from her daddy, of all people, and then died later. Non-counted deaths in this is Freddy Krueger, laid to rest by Neil Gordon. We say non-counted because even though he dies in this movie, obviously it doesn't take. Amanda Krueger is revealed to have died some time ago. Neil Gordon is possibly killed off screen at the end by Freddy Krueger. There are 22 floating corpses seen hanged in a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
Of Kristen's. That's actually a very effective scene, like seeing all those dead kids in that room.
Yeah.
And then the little nightmare girl is seen as a skeleton.
Oh, that was
carrying.
awesome. I loved that so much. You're hurting me.
And then she looks down and she's just a skeleton.
Yeah.
And then we have 3 Elm Street teens are reported to have committed suicide right before or right at the beginning of the movie. And then we have Zsa Zsa Gabor flashed right after the TV is turned off in the nightmare that Jennifer is having.
I have to go back. I'm going to just add this in. You already said it, but the internet cut out. Donald Thompson, who was impaled through the back with metal junk.
Yes.
Well, actually, I don't think you got to finish Will Stanton. Will Stanton, who was stabbed in the chest with finger knives. Donald Thompson impaled through the back with metal junk. And then you came back around Nancy Thompson, but she was stabbed in the gut with finger knives.
Yeah, and then I mentioned, sadly, by her own father, which is the most heartbreaking part of that scene because she thinks that she is being reunited with her father who's just died, and then it's Freddy, and that's rough.
Dirty.
Quotes. We have Dick Cavett on the TV in Jennifer's dream saying, "Can I ask you a question?" And then Zsa Zsa Gabor is like, "Why, certainly." And then Dick Cavett turns into Freddy Krueger. "Who the fuck, or who gives a fuck what you think?" And then he stabs her, assumedly. It kind of cuts off.
Oh, my God.
Freddy Krueger, "Welcome home, Taryn. Look familiar?" And then she's like, "Okay, asshole." And then twirls her wrist blades and she's like, "Let's dance," you know. Pretty good moment for her in that scene. Max, Lawrence Fishburne saying, "This lump over here, this is Kincaid. Now I want you to take a good look. See, he gets himself thrown in the quiet room so often that you probably won't see a whole lot of him. Ain't that right, Cool Breeze?" And then Roland's like, "Right, I do it so I don't have to look at your ugly face all the time." And then Max is like, "Yeah, I love you too." You got to say one thing about Lawrence Fishburne. That man's got charisma.
Oh, yes, he does.
When he's on scene or on screen in this movie, he stands out.
Yes.
Like, you know.
Well, he's also like 9 foot tall, so there's that.
That's true. He's standing away, heads and shoulders, literally above everybody else. But I mean, it's just also the way that he projects himself.
Yeah.
Will Stanton, after Nancy explains Freddy Krueger's history, that's crazy. Mom and Dad never mentioned any. And then Taryn interrupts, saying, "All right, that's the sort of thing parents tell their kids. Good night, darling. Say your prayers. Oh, and by the way, your father and I torched some maniac last night."
Yeah.
Freddie saying, "Well, Will, you look tired. Have a seat." And then Will Stanton's like, "No, thanks. I'm fine just the way that I am." And then Freddy Krueger, "For now, maybe. But when you wake up, it's back in the saddle again."
Oh, my God.
That is such a fucking dark thing
Yeah.
that he says, because it is hinted that the reason that Will is in the wheelchair is because that Freddy almost got to him prior to him being admitted, and that's why he is paraplegic or whatever. He's disabled. It's because that whatever the accident was that caused that was from Freddy to begin with. Now Freddy's taunting him. It's like, you don't have fucking legs in the real world, do you, bitch? You know, like, that's so dark.
Isn't that how nightmares work, though? Really, they just get to your. They just get you to the core.
They do, but it's just the fact that he's the responsible for it.
Yeah.
And then he's just like throwing it back in this poor kid's face, Visuals in this movie. There is some now there is some weird janky shit with the CGI skeleton, which I love because it goes back to like Harryhausen type effects.
Yes.
From like, Clash of
the Titans.
Clash of the Titans and that sort of thing. And then even like we want to go back and throw references back to Evil Dead because of the rivalry between Wes and Raimi. It almost looks like the skeletons in Army of Darkness. And there's some weird, like, pre-CGI effects they did, like with the perpetual motion machine, whenever the little balls at the end of that, like, kind of start floating up. And that's why they recognize they're in the dream after they've been hypnotized.
Yeah.
But the prosthetic effects in this are amazing. Like that worm Freddy is probably the best thing.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of I think I tried to send you a photo of Llareyna eating the children at the house at HHN. And it looked very similar to that, except it was, her face, my face, on it instead of Freddy Krueger. So yes, I was loving that.
That scene, the scene later on, which is another horrible thing that's really dark about this movie, is not only that does Freddy kill these kids, he's absorbing their souls, so they can't even go on to the afterlife. Because this is this is another good addition to this movie that it did that would be brought up in like every film afterward, is that he has a scene where like he tears his shirt open and you see the faces of the previous kids in the movie screaming in eternal torment. And it's like, he's not only killing these kids, but he's also, they're in perpetual hell within him. Like,
within him.
That is so dark. Like, it's such a dark addition to this movie.
He swallowed the kids, much like many women before him.
I'm trying to think of some of the other visuals in this movie. I love the stuff. This is more story based, but it kind of ties into visuals. The way that they portray Amanda Kruger is like this nun that only like Neil can see, and like it's almost got Exorcist vibes to it. Yeah,
she was creepy from the beginning. So, and not really intended to be, but I guess she was.
Yeah. And you can tell that she's more of a peaceful spirit, and she's trying to set right what went wrong. But at the same time, the way that she appears is creepy. She's always like off to herself somewhere in the distance. Whether it be in an abandoned building or whatever. So it plays into that whole ghost thing pretty well, and which I'll enjoy that part of it.
Yeah.
We can't talk about the visuals without talking about that tendon scene. Like, good God.
Good God, that was rough. That was awesome, though.
Yeah, they really sold the effects on that. Like, it really stands out.
Oh, the ripped open areas of his legs, like, because the slasher portion of it, you don't see anything. You just see Freddy slashing at him. You don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden, you see the tendons come up, and then as he's walking, you start seeing the reality of the situation. And I think that the build up to that was great. I think it's good how they did that and how they didn't just show you everything all at once. Oh my God, I could feel it in my bones or my tendons.
It is so brutal the way that it's acted, the way that they made it look on film, and it's the reason it gets best kill, because it's the standout in the series. I mean,
it was almost a waste that they wasted him so early in the film, because he was obviously such an amazing actor. They could have done this scene later and still had him carry out some pretty awesome scenes, I think.
I think so too, yeah, because that kid did have a pretty, he stood out pretty well, so it was kind of a loss to get rid of him earlier like that. There's the scene with all the kids, like we said, hanging, in Kristen's nightmare. That was pretty well done.
Yes.
I mean, it's really dark, kind of showing you all the other kids that have been taken from Elm Street in the year since Nancy and her, group of friends were, first plagued by Freddy. So I mean, it shows the kill count is pretty high of these children, unfortunately. Could even be kind of, they're symbolizing the kids that he killed before, but I got more of a vibe in this movie that it's like the kids that have been dying recently, because the way that they were hanging stuff, it was suicide, and built into that whole thing. I like the look of Nancy's house in this every time that Kristen goes to it in her dreams, because it's all run down. I mean, you can tell it's the same, a very similar house, but it's like just the nightmare version of it.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the other things in the movie that really stood out. Let's see. I did like in the scene with Taryn, the way that they filmed that alley or whatever, and the way that the light and the way, and that scene also is good, because it's one of the first times we get the more of the jokey Freddy that we would get later on, like the way that he is with the heroin fingers or whatever.
Oh yeah, that was fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, you have this girl and that's another dark part of the movie. You have this girl who is shown that she's trying her best to recover from her abuses in the past, both maybe physical and from drugs. Mm-hmm. She's got this creepy orderly that's been hitting on her that says that's basically knows about her past, and he's offering her drugs and for sex, and you clearly tell that there's a huge age difference and it's pedophilic. Mm-hmm. And then she gets in this dream and she talks about how it empowers her. She feels like a badass in her dreams, and then the one thing that Freddy does the same thing to her that the other guy talked about, kind of strengthening that pedophilic thing a little bit, is that he deliberately overdoses her on the heroin inside of her dreams. So
yeah,
it's a very dark moment in that movie, but the way that it's lit and the way that the alleyway's filmed, it's pretty good.
Ooh, and the needles.
Oh yeah, and the way that her arms had like the little mouths that are like begging for the needles in them too. That was a pretty cool effect. Yeah,
because I prior to watching these three again for the show, is I had seen 1 and 3, but I had not seen 2. So yeah, I was a kid when I had weren't we all when I first saw this one. So yeah, that was wild.
And then of course there's the weird tongue things that like strap Joey to the bed, and that's a whole thing of itself,
Freddy and his tongue, man.
Yeah. I mean, he's a woman again in that scene, hitting on a boy. So there's that whole thing back from 2, but like he just literally takes his tongue out and just like uses it like this, like kind of like one of those snap wrist things that you had when back in the 80s. It just completely latched around his hands and he was tied there.
Oh my God.
Story in this, the story's great in this. I think you got the kids who are committing suicide, so you got that, or supposedly, and so now and it makes logical sense. Like the parents don't know what to do with them. They think that they're committing self-harm out for other reasons, because teenagers do that. So they admit them to this mental institution, which still isn't helping the kids, because obviously Freddy's right there and he can still take them out. You add the backstory about Amanda and how she, like the, 9,900 maniacs, however many it was, that raped her, and that, he's the bastard son of. So it builds that backstory on the Freddy. And then you have the whole thing worked in to where it's almost like it works in like old timey gothic horror too, because hallowed ground has to be where you bury his bones, almost like Dracula or something.
Or Supernatural.
Yeah, that sort of thing. The holy water, mix all that stuff in. It kind of gives it like it ties it into older horror tropes. And then the fact that you've got like the return of the previous final girl in the series, Nancy coming back I think this might be one of the first final girls to ever come back and like actually play a mentor role to the new final girl in the movie. It does a lot of good stuff in the movie.
I got a question. Because maybe I missed something. So, Mrs. Kruger, just kidding, wasn't Mrs. She was a nun, but so she got raped.
Yes.
By a bunch of inmates that had escaped, mental inmates which totally makes sense why Freddy Krueger is partially the way he is. I mean, for many reasons, I guess. That's a good addition to the storyline. She's dead, but she clearly didn't die from the excessive rape because she gave birth to a child. How did she die?
Yes.
What did I miss?
They never mentioned how she actually died. It was like years later, and it was assumed that she had like gave him up at some point and like, went back to being a nun. And, but that's about the extent of it, I
wonder if she had to have been forgiven by the church because she didn't consensually get pregnant.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that, and that was the other thing that's really twisted and dark about her. The backstory for her is because the reason that it was like, not that they would have. I don't know if they would have done this anyways, and that's you can have that debate. We're not going to have it here, but like abortion and Catholic Church and all that stuff. But it was months later, I think, or the way they described it, at least a month or two after when they finally opened that building up and found out that she was in there. So she not only has she been raped multiple times over multiple days, weeks, whatever. Yeah. But the pregnancy had already set by that point.
Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a very dark story to a character. I mean, and it's probably one of the darkest ones because, I mean, it's funny, you got Jason and the parallel or the contrast between two of them are amazing. It's like you got Freddy, who was, came about because of fire, killing his original form. So he's the fire. Yeah. Jason's the water, drowned, as a kid, came back. Jason's mother was overprotective of him, loved him to death, but then like Freddy's mom, like deliberately is trying to end his existence because he should have never existed in the first place. So it's like, it's weird between the two of them as far as like, they're polar opposites.
Late term abortion.
Yeah. She's going for a late term abortion. She's like, it's a little bit more accepted now, right? It's no longer the 40s. We can get by with this. But that's, do you have any problems with the story as it is? Like any complaints about it?
No, not at all. I actually really loved this story because once again, I loved Dream Warriors because that's exactly what the kids were in this, powered by one very strong, leading final girl. And then you have, a little, like I said, just a smidgen added to Freddy Krueger's backstory, which makes him even like not more likable, less likable in a sense, but like more villainous. It just makes sense.
Yeah, he's darker and more evil in this movie, but he's like, there's more of that personality coming out. So
and he's a product of mental illness.
Yeah, this movie is like a good transition film for Freddy because he's as dark as he is, just about as, outside of 2 as he'll ever get as far as like the kills and how brutal he is, but he's got the personality that will eventually be the highlight of him going forward in the later sequels.
So I liked that. I think everything that they put in this, I don't know, to me it just all made sense. So
yeah, there's really no part of this movie, outside, and I even love the janking as far as like those Harryhausen effects. Like they're fun for what they are.
They're comical, but they're still scary.
Acting in this movie is improved across the board. Oh God,
majorly by all new people, but then you had, you got Freddy Krueger, you got Nancy, who was already, in the previous, the first one. Obviously, she's improved.
And Heather's way better in this movie than she was in the first one.
Well, she's also a little bit older, too. And then you got Patricia Arquette, who was destined to be a pretty decent actress.
Yes, I mean playing, a lot of it. I mean, she got both like the the verbal, but also the facial, acting in this movie down pretty well.
And the rest of the kids actually did a great job, considering they're supposed to be your typical 80s, maybe potentially one-off kids. We don't know where their careers are going to go or not.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no ones there's really not one that I can think is bad. They all play their parts the way that they're supposed to be played.
Yes.
I mean, the actress who played Taryn, you can tell like the darkness in her past and how she's trying to overcome it. She gives that to the character. Kincaid's more of a one note, like anger based character, but he plays it well.
Mm-hmm.
The nerdy kid Will is, I mean, he plays a nerdy kid. I mean, he kind of reminds me of like a young Stephen King, the way that they got him looking at this movie. The one kid with the puppets is not in the movie enough, but he's got a good personality to him right before he's taken out.
Yeah.
And he acted his ass off in that scene with the pain.
Yeah.
And then the one kid that's the mute in the movie.
Yes.
I mean,
that only has a voice in a dream. Isn't that like a real life situation? I bet you that's how it is for someone who can't speak in real life. They can speak in their dreams. Or someone who can't walk in real life can walk in their dreams,
I've heard that, and it might be a thing that's weird to comprehend. Like, but there's stories about how people who are like blind and deaf say that they can either see or hear in their dreams too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they get those senses back. So, but yeah, we get all that, and then we I mean, and we got like even the side characters like Lawrence Fishburne, they stand out. They're good actors, The actor who plays Neil is good at what he's doing in the role. Saxon's playing the disheveled, I mean, he's went through some shit, still doesn't believe any of it or refuses to believe it. He actually gives off the vibe that he believes it, but he refuses to accept that it was actually a thing. He plays that so well in that scene, in his scenes that he's in the movie.
Yeah.
Just across the board, I think that's good acting. The music in this, they return back to the original style music. And it has it has the Dawkins song that is like famous for this film. They made a music video and everything out of it.
Yeah.
So return to form on music too. I mean, across the board.
Definitely.
To me, it's a better movie. Anything you want to say about it before we move on to trivia?
No.
On the VHS release, the music video for Dawkins' Dream Warriors appeared after the credits. The video contains many scenes from the movie and ends when the band vanquishes Freddy, causing him to wake up from his own nightmare and ask, "Who were those guys?" That's another reason why Freddy's beloved. It's little things like that where he's like the meta commentary about, like he can, joke around about shit like that.
Yes.
Kevin Sagos stated in a interview that he really didn't want to audition for the role of Kincaid, but his agent talked him into going. On the day of the audition, he walked in heavy rain to catch a bus location. He showed up completely drenched and had to sit and wait for hours due to the auditions running late. When it was his turn, the director, Chuck Russell, told him, "Do whatever you want to do." Sagos was so frustrated and mad about the whole ordeal that he yelled, "Fuck you," and then immediately proceeded to scream and curse at Russell. Russell immediately hired him.
That would like wow, because I feel like that would not happen like that now. Because that takes, it doesn't necessarily take real talent, but that was like the passion coming out of this kid. And I don't really know that like casting directors see that nowadays.
No, it's just hilarious that he basically, by him getting so pissed off at the situation he was in and cussing out the actual director of the movie is what got him the job.
Yeah, I'm glad it did. That's awesome.
Robert Englund admits that he knew Patricia Arquette would go on to be a big star one day. He also explains how all the guys on the set were head over heels in love with her. Between takes, some of them would even go to England to get his advice on whether or not they thought they had a chance with her and should ask her out.
Oh my God. That must have been so awkward for him. Poor guy. I mean, he probably loved it, but like how old was he in comparison to her,
He would have he was in his like 30s or so, I think, during the filming of
this.
Yeah,
and she's probably in her 20s. So like he was probably still somewhat, even though he's not that much older than her, probably still somewhat of a father figure to her, Daddy Freddy,
And then you got these guys like, how do I get with Chris? Like, that's kind of my on-screen
Yeah.
or on-set daughter. I'm not going to tell you any of this.
Yeah, fucking weirdos.
Wes Craven's original premise for the film involved Freddy invading the real world and haunting the actors and crew responsible for Nightmare on Elm Street films, which was inspired by Return to Horror High in 1987, which was another meta-horror movie at the time. However, this idea was rejected by the studio for being too ambitious, but Craven would later use it to make New Nightmare in 1994.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a good concept for a movie.
Yeah.
Jennifer Rubin was told by some of her fans that her character of Taryn had caused him to quit drugs, and the actress is very proud of that fact.
Oh, good for her.
For the dream sequence in which Dick Cavett interviews interrupted by Freddy Krueger, Sally Kellerman was originally in the script as the guest, but Cavett was then allowed to pick the person he'd be interviewing. He picked Zsa Zsa Gabor because he thought she was the dumbest person he'd ever met in his life, and he'd never have her on his show in real life. So if there was one person he'd want to see killed by Freddy, it would be her.
Oh, that's fucking awesome. I have to circle back, though. We have to go back to those people that it's like, you helped me get off of drugs. I wonder if she scared them off of taking drugs.
I'm sure it was a combination of the scare, but also the fact that she really is playing a character.
Yes.
Like, you can sense that she's got an inner strength, that she's like trying to overcome all this. And
Yeah.
they see that in the, you talk about representation. It doesn't have to be along, sexual identification or race or anything. It can be just like personal, like life history. And she's one of those representatives of that, like people who's on drugs. It's like they see that character, they see the trauma, like I said, in her face, like the way that she brings that to the character. And they're like, shit, that's me,
Like when I see a character that has diabetes.
When Wilford Brimley's on screen.
Yes. I feel it in my bones.
At around 29 minutes, when the clay puppet's face turns into Freddy's, special effects man Doug Beswick used stop motion animation. Filming began when clay Freddy face began with a clay Freddy face that was made plainer in each frame. The result was then run backward, so that it appears in the final cut of the film.
What? Claymation? I could barely tell.
But I still love it, as janky as it is.
Yeah.
For 1 week during filming, Robert Englund was working 24 hours every day. By day, he was wrapping up filming on his television series Downtown, and then he would report to Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors set at nights. Once, after a tiring day on set, he fell asleep in his dressing room, still in full Freddy makeup, and when he awoke and looked in the mirror, he got a terrible scare.
That's the fucking best, dude. I love that.
I feel so bad for you. Freddy causes people not to be able to sleep, but Robert Englund in real life couldn't sleep because of him filming the movie.
Yeah.
That's crazy. At around 38-minute mark, Jennifer is watching the movie Critters.
Oh my God. Wait, hold on. I got to back it up just a little bit. Said he worked about a week, working 24 hours a day. Well, I don't think that's necessarily untrue. He had to have at least 15-minute, 20-minute sleeps here and there. Like, he just can't survive.
No, I mean, he wasn't like the whole week, like going 24 hours a day, but I mean, he was literally whatever breaks they gave him.
Sleeping.
He was sleeping.
Yeah. He wasn't having genuine, real sleep. Anyways.
I just love the fact that Critters is shown in this movie, and then later Freddy is shown in Critters 2.
I love that. I like the crossovers that they're doing here. And it's like a friendly rivalry, like they're trying to be dicks, but they're really not. If anything, they're promoting. Yeah,
it's cross promoting between the two of them.
Yeah.
Wes Craven had nothing to do with the first sequel, Freddy's Revenge, as he didn't believe the Elm Street franchise was spawning, or Elm Street was capable of spawning a franchise. The success of the second film outgrossing the original convinced him otherwise. Money talks, bitch.
It does, but also you can tell he wasn't a part of the second one.
Oh, yeah, for sure you could tell that he wasn't a part of that one. At around 51 minutes for the sexy nurse scene, the set was flipped so that Rodney Eastman was standing up when he appears to be strapped to the bed. He had to be spread eagled for so long that he actually passed out. He compared this experience to a crucifixion.
Jesus Christ. Literally.
Literally, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Kristen comes across a classic Nightmare image of a roasted pig
I
on a
love
table,
that.
and it comes to life and crawls at her. That was actually another good visual in the movie.
I loved that, yeah.
Get this though, they actually roasted a pig, let it spoil, and then the prop guys puppeted the rotting corpse from beneath. The poor guy who was actually behind the camera, cinematographer Roy H. Wagner, claims that the pig stench was so overwhelming that he can still smell it to this day.
Oh, fucking it haunts him.
That's like the story we told about, like the dinner scene and or the final scenes in Texas Chainsaw, where all that rotted meat was like just causing everybody to literally hallucinate at that point.
In the scorching summer heat.
Yep. For writing credit for Oscar nominated, it's the first writing credit for Oscar nominated writer and director Frank Darabont. He went on to do a lot of good movies, so that's
nice.
It's special effects creator Mark Shostrom created a desiccated little girl corpse, which Kristen was discovered she was holding, but it was decided that the item was too grotesque because they were going to have her more of a zombie look. A miniature skeleton was used instead. I like the skeleton. I think it's a good little effect.
I thought it was funny, but it was also effective. It didn't look too cheap. I just loved the way that it worked out. It's like, you're hurting me, and you look down. I did expect to see a zombie type character, but instead I saw the skeleton. I fucking loved it.
Yeah, it's got a nice little I don't know, it's a nice little effect or whatever, just for the jokiness of it, you know, versus like if it had been like, I imagine if it had been like a rotting, like, you know, zombie look for the kid, it would have been more disturbing, but there's a funness about it being a skeleton in place of it.
Yeah.
In Wes Craven's original script, Freddy was supposed to be born at the beginning of the film in a ranch-style house, which was supposed to be the place where his victims wound up, revealing that was why Freddy always came back again and again in the dream world, as that was his original resting. Also, Nancy and her father were supposed to burn it down, but Freddy's influence on it wouldn't allow it to happen until they eventually do in the climax, where it takes the last survivor, Kristen, back in time. When Freddy was born, whom tries to kill her, she would throw the infant Freddy across the wall many times, wraps the Freddy glove for a good grip, and stabs the baby with a glove.
Damn!
So you would send baby Freddy killed in the past with his own glove. That's interesting.
Yeah, fucking brutal.
The original Freddy snake, that's what it's called, for all euphemisms thrown in there, unintentionally came out looking too phallic. The crew only had 1 hour to film the scene, so they didn't have enough time to paint it, so it was covered in a green goo substance to overcome the pinkish hue that made it look like a penis. The scene involving the Freddy snake attempting to swallow Kristen was also filmed backwards and then played in reverse due to the gums on the puppet being too flexible and were folding over themselves. In interviews with the cast and crew of the DVD commentary, it is revealed that the original idea for the film centered around the phenomena of children traveling to a specific location to commit suicide, with dreams of Freddy Krueger eventually discovered to be a common link between the use. At the time, teen suicide was a taboo social issue, and this led to the abandonment of that storyline, although some aspects remained within the film's version, which still depicts suicide and self-mutilation. This was deemed less controversial because these acts are committed with Freddy's distinct influence, inserting enough fantasy in the acts to remove them from supposed controversial exploitation of disturbed use.
I think that was smart.
Yeah. The idea of, though, like a place where they all commit suicide, it's got more of a ring of like the Sinister movies. I know you haven't seen those, but like, because we discussed it during like ghost season, but like that's kind of the, like, these kids are like murdering their families because they're ordered to by Bagul or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, I think that it was better that they went more in the Freddy's causing these suicides. In the final shooting script, one of the warriors dreams up a giant Transformer-style robot to fight Freddy. This sequence even made it to the storyboard stage, but budgetary constraints made filming.
I'm glad that they didn't include that.
I don't think it would have fit
the
same way. Chuck Russell made his directorial debut with this movie. Delivered called for a $20 million budget to pull off all the effects, even though they only had $4.5 million to work with. The result was an incredibly tense set, not a particularly ideal setting for Patricia Arquette to make her film debut. On her first day of filming, the production was already her scenes until 4 a.m., by which point she had forgotten her lines. It took 52 takes of her feebly making her way through it before they simply fed her the lines via cue cards behind the camera.
Oh my God.
Arquette has stated that it wasn't he may have pushed her a bit too hard during the filming of that. Robert Englund wrote a treatment for this movie. It wasn't used, so he actually actual idea for this movie, but they didn't use it. The only film out of the first 6 not to begin with a nightmare scene. Wes
Wait,
Craven
hold on.
with,
Stop for a second. I have to think. It didn't start with a nightmare scene?
No, because this is the scene in this is where Patricia or Arquette's character is
she's building the house.
She's building the house,
okay.
Nancy's house, and then her whore mom, another whore mother comes in there, and she's like, "What are you doing up so late? I'm getting ready to bang a guy," that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, but it leads into a horror scene. It's
later
not...
on, they redo it later on in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they all get separated, and then she thinks she's back at home, and it's all been a dream since then.
No.
And she's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go to sleep, mother." And she's like, "That's good, honey." And then all of a sudden, Freddy comes, or she disappears. She gets jerked back real quick. Freddy rips her head off, and then he's standing there with her corpse, head, and he's got this suit, this bow tie, and this tuxedo on, and he's goes on from that.
Well, no, because at the beginning of the film, from what I saw, hold on, because it's basically saying it's okay to not begin with the nightmare scene, but the beginning is because
she falls asleep and then she goes into a nightmare. Though.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I see that.
Yes.
All right, because I'm wait a second, but it wasn't that far off. So
no, I mean it goes to it pretty quick, but it's in the real world to start out with versus the other ones. We've already mentioned that David Arquette is actually Patricia's brother, and their dad, as we mentioned on the Scream podcast, played in part 2 of Scream movies as the sheriff. So kind of got the whole Arquette family going in these movies. In real life, Ira Hayden, Will, was a Dungeons & Dragons dungeon master during high school, which made him feel secure in the role, which he thinks is the reason why he got the part of Will to begin with.
Nice.
Director Chuck Russell stated in an interview that the mirror sequence was very difficult to do. He stated that it was before CGI, so they had to get really inventive. They were literally manipulating Mylar in front of the cameras to get the shot done.
Wow.
You got to get creative on a shoestring budget, especially back in the day when you didn't have computers to just fancy it up and make it look,
Mm-hmm.
It's a known fact that the Freddy glove was stolen from the set of this specific movie. Chuck Russell gave a recent interview and gave a little bit more of an explanation as to the circumstances of how it was stolen. Apparently, 2 hardcore Freddy fans snuck into the set, disguised themselves as movie grips. Nobody had noticed the 2 throughout the day, and while on break, they grabbed the Freddy glove and left while no one was looking.
Reverend and I can neither confirm or deny our locations during that time.
We wasn't 6 and 5 at the time.
Yeah.
So that was, no big deal there. I wonder if their names were Glenn and Jason.
Yeah, shut up.
At around 15 minutes when Nancy meets the teenage patients, Philip says, "Welcome to the Snake Pit." Snake Pit is a slang term for a mental health facility, and was a common slang term throughout most of the 20th century.
And then she gets attacked by a snake. I
wondered about that line when he showed up, so that's the reason I put this in here.
Yeah.
This is the first movie in which the main antagonist is solely referred to as Freddy Krueger. In the first 2 films, he is mostly called Fred Krueger.
Frederick.
Winona Ryder actually auditioned for the role of Kristen, but director Chuck Russell felt that Ryder was too young for the role. Ryder would later become engaged to Johnny Depp, who starred in the first film in the series.
I think that was a mistake.
I think so, too. I think Winona would have knocked it out of the fucking park in this movie.
Yeah, and not only that, she would have knocked it out. But, I mean, I'm not disappointed with Patricia Arquette. I think she did an amazing job, so I don't want to take away, he felt that for whatever reason, but I wonder if he regrets that.
I just think it's kind of weird that Depp and Ryder have, this connection, and, and then, at the same time, because we mentioned it on the Sleepy Hollow episode during Ghost Season, the fact that Christina Ricci was literally a kid that both of them knew in one of the movies. It's all of the Tim Burton people knew each other prior to becoming in Tim Burton films, it seems like.
That's true.
The movie was intended to be the last Nightmare movie, and it was shot that way, with the ending of the film suggests that Freddy may not be all dead. A scene in the shooting script makes it clear that was not the case. And the scene where Dr. Gordon visits Kristen a few days after Freddy's defeat, Kristen reveals that she is moving to New York, the city that never sleeps, which is funny given where Scream's going in the new movie.
Oh, yeah.
When Dr. Gordon asks her if she's going to see her, referring to Nancy in her dreams, Kristen answers that she dreams of her every night, suggesting that Nancy is now guarding her in her dreams.
Wow.
The scene then cuts to an ending, which plays in the finish as it was scripted, in which Neil is sleeping and a light turns on in the lighthouse or in the house model. It is implied that Nancy, not Freddy, actually turned on the light as she is guarding Gordon as well. But in the movie, without all that context, it almost seems like Freddy is the one that turns on that, on the house light.
I like that there's no context because clearly we get more movies. So
I like it, but at the same time, I feel like Nancy, that was a better ending for her to go on to be like like she not only defended, children in real life, like now that she's in the dream world, she's Freddy's foil that way. I like that idea of her as the final girl standing up to him in the dream world now.
Yeah.
At around 40 minutes, Robert Englund improvised quite a few of Freddy Krueger's one-liners, but the best-known example happened in the scene where Freddy emerged from the television set and killed Jennifer by smashing her head into it. For this scene, his line in the script was, "This is it, Jennifer, your big break on TV." Robert Englund said this line for the first two takes, but on the third take, when Chuck Russell went for an alternative angled shot, Robert Englund changed it to, "Welcome to primetime, bitch." Chuck Russell couldn't decide which version to use, so he added the two together. The different camera angle made it easy to edit the two lines together, and it became possibly Freddy's defining one-liner. And yes, that is the best Freddy quote for the Death Holler Awards. It is the best quote that Freddy ever says, period. It's the best thing ever. I mean, you can't get any better than that. It's just like, "Welcome to primetime." It's just so good.
Yeah.
Like, it is so good. Originally, Taryn's character's head was set to explode after being injected with Freddy's syringes, but it looked too fake, so they took it out of the movie.
Man!
Although it seems Krueger killed Elaine Parker, Kristen's mother, he did not, as she appears in the next film, spoiler alert, Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 4, The Dream Master. Hold on just a second here. I have to scroll back down to this. I hate the one thing bad about working on a laptop that's an Apple product is that like some of the times whenever you're like you go to scroll, like if you scroll just the wrong way, it thinks that you're meaning to like completely go back and completely removes you from like everything.
How dare you have an Apple product?
Yeah, how dare I do that?
So shocked and appalled after all we've been through with our Google Pixels.
Well, it's sometimes you just got to do the best you can, and that's how it goes.
You want me to start with it, and then you can catch up?
Yeah, I'll catch up. Go ahead with it.
The scene in which Neil Gordon, Craig Wasson, is thrown into the grave and partially buried by the skeleton of Freddy is a tribute to Body Double, 1984, in which Wasson's character is similarly buried alive.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of neat that they had him in two different films where he basically has the same thing happen to him over the course of both movies. Let's see. Yeah, the Nancy's death was in Wes Craven's original Dream Warriors screenplay. Although much of the finished film had nothing to do with his script, he is responsible for Nancy's death more than anyone else. He created her in Nightmare on Elm Street, and he's the one that killed her in this movie.
Wow. Way to go.
At around 36 minutes, the movie on television that Jennifer watches before she dies is Critters, and the very short clip just before she switches to the Dick Cavett show featuring Donald Pleasance is a scene from Alone in the Dark, which was written by or directed by Jack Shoulder, so they were throwing back again to, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 in a roundabout sense.
Yeah.
So they were kind of working in multiple things there. Death Holler Awards for this movie. What do you think about Kristen as a foe?
Well, I like it because she's a dream warrior. She's a Llareyna. So
I looked it up while we were like talking earlier, and it's funny because at this time period, both this movie and Nightmare, and then Friday the 13th, because when we get to part 7, when we start that series back up, that has one of the most better known final girls in that series because she's a psychic, like a Carrie-like person. And it's funny that both of them had a psychic character, final girl, in both of the movies. Like Kristen's psychic ability is she can pull others into her dream. In her dreams, which is good in this movie because that empowers her, but it's actually a bad thing that Freddy uses against her in part 4 because he uses her as bait to get other people in her dreams, and then that's how he's able to. I think they set it up in that movie, if I remember right, that when we get there. But like, I think the setup is that he can't escape Elm Street. He can only kill the kids on that street, and he's pretty much done all that he can there. And he breaks free of Elm Street, his restriction that way, because he uses Kristen's power to bring other kids from other areas. And that's how he starts attacking the other parts of Springwood.
Yeah, she's not just a dream puller. She doesn't just pull people. Well, excuse me, not just a lucid dreamer. She's a dream puller. It's not something I do in my dreams. And it's not something I've really heard of as a phenomena. Have I had my dog in my dream guiding me who sleeps right next to me? Yeah, but that doesn't mean I pulled him into it or anything, or that he invited himself.
She does have a power, though, other than that. Once she's in her dream, she's got like acrobatic skills. It's one of the least of all the other kids, but her main power is like so strong that it has to be lighter versus all their abilities too.
Yeah.
But she serves the part well. She's the vulnerable character. She stands up to Freddy later. She's got the mentor and the previous final girl, Nancy, and then has to watch her mentor die right in her hands, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, she goes through a lot. So, I mean, she's up there. Nancy's still the final girl for this series.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I mean, but Kristen's not bad.
No, not at all.
Freddy's, like I said, this is the transition film. This is the best version we have Freddy as far as the scary with the charismatic. This is the best we get because he goes more goofy, jokey starting in part 4. He's still menacing in part 4, but he starts that he's like probably 60-40 goofy versus menacing in that one. This one's a good split. And
ad-libbing his own lines too.
Yes. But that's why a lot of people consider this the best sequel, because this is the best version of the things they like about Freddy. We get the best out of him in this movie.
Yeah.
Best kill, we've already said it, the puppet scene with the nerves, the tendons coming out of the it's not Joey, but the other kid's like arms, like that's so brutal. Like, and you can't get that in another slasher just because it's so ridiculous. It only works inside of a dream, which is in Freddy's wheelhouse. Like, I mean, you would never get that in Ghostface movies. They're set in the real world, basically, give or take. And there's the only other slasher that I could see trying to do something like this is probably Art the Clown from Terrifier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he would legit try this in reality, but he's the only other slasher that would. Best scream, probably Kristen in this one during the Freddy snake scene. It still doesn't beat Jesse. There's no beating that scream.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Nothing's ever going to compare.
No. But she does have it's good that your best scream queen in the movie is your final girl. You kind of want that for it to work. This is the best Freddy quote ever. Welcome to primetime, bitch. I mean, it's so good. Like, it's just, it's what everybody like I was talking to Cody, and like that was the thing. Like, we looked at each other, and like that was the line we both quoted at the same time. Like, everybody knows this line, like that. It stands out. And we can actually give a legit best boobs in this podcast. So cue the clapping, awards sound that we don't have. The nurse in Joey's dream. My God, we got some good boobs in this movie.
Were they good boobs? When it was half burnt.
They were not when she first starts like undressing. They turn into burnt, but they start out pretty fine, and then they turn into Freddy, and then you're weirded out as a kid. You're like, it's sad. This is probably will get me in trouble. It's almost the effect that guys have now, like the traps that you have on the internet, where you're like, that chick ain't bad looking, and it's like, I'm trans. It's like, oh, what?
Big old wiener comes flopping out.
Yeah. But we got that in the 80s with Freddie in this scene. So there you go, folks. What is that? 40 years ahead of its time, basically, give or take.
Oh my God.
I don't know if they legit have any breasts in the rest of the series. I actually was going to take that whole thing out of this entire thing and not even like put that in as a award for this series. And then whenever that happened, I'm like, nope, they're going back in. Though we had some tits in this movie, thank God.
Hot nurse knockers.
The nurse knockers, and I've already mentioned it. They had that classic nurse outfit.
That,
the fetish nurse outfit that doesn't even exist, but maybe it still existed in the 80s. I don't know.
Gosh, she's wearing a white thong too.
Mm-hmm. Best side character, probably Taryn or Max. To me at least, I liked both of them for different reasons, but I think Taryn probably. I liked the tormented character that actress brought, and also the empower. That scene is almost like heartbreaking when you know what happens to her later, where she's like, I'm a badass in my dream, and you feel for her. It's like, you're happy for her, but then you also know you're sad because you know what's going to happen to her later. And then how annoying is Doom Prophet? Amanda Kruger is the Doom Prophet in this movie.
Oh yeah, she is. I wouldn't so much say annoying, but
creepy.
The only thing she adds is a creep effect, and obviously she adds the storyline, but like, she's not really doing anything.
No, she's the classic woman in white that's just kind of like there, but she serves the purpose of the Doom Prophet, because even though Kristen and the kids are telling everybody, the only person who really gets that through to Neil beside Nancy does to a degree, but the only one who really convinces him later on is Amanda. Like, she's the one that gets him on that side. Dumbest moment is Donald Thompson refusing to help Neil even when he's seeing clear signs of the supernatural.
Oh yeah, but isn't that just how it goes, though?
Yeah, it is. It just pissed me off because he's and that's another heartbreaking thing about this movie. When you break down and you really delve into what's going on in this movie, Nancy, after all the trauma she went through, and that was something I don't think I put in the original notes for part one. But you can clearly tell in part one that which parent she's she associates more with. She calls her mother, which is about as nondescript as you can get, but she calls her daddy, and that there's that she really loves her father in that movie, he's the one parent that she associates with. And in this movie, it goes to show that after everything that happened, he completely pulled away from her, and that was the one parent that she relied on, and she had to live the rest of all those years up until her end in this movie, basically estranged from the one parent that she cared about.
Yeah.
So it's really dark, and him being like a drunk. I mean, that fits given the fact that he's trying to constantly bury all that stuff, but he has one time to redeem himself in this movie, and then you see him trying to hop back in the vehicle and back away when all the other cars are flashing their lights and all that shit, and it's just come on, stop being a piece of shit and actually stand up. Your daughter's actually about to die. Won't help her?
Nope. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm going to appear as a dream. It's Freddy, but still, I'm going to appear in her dreams, make her think that everything's fine. Then I'm going to kill her. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
There's so much dark in this movie. It really is, psychologically.
Yeah, I mean, but they're they're good because I think it's a good mix. There is so much darkness in all of these films, and psychologically they can fuck somebody up. And that is, let's be honest, not a lot of people are lucid dreamers. For the most part, most people aren't and don't have control of their dreams. And I'm sorry, but even as a lucid dreamer, shit gets real in your fucking dreams, and it gets scary, and it will fuck you up. So it is a good thing that, Freddy Krueger is the character that he is, and that, Robert Englund puts in the efforts to kind of add some comic relief to kind of make it to where you can make it to the end of these movies. You know, you're still going to be fucked up a little bit, but like he makes it bearable, you know?
The funniest thing is as a kid, these were the only slasher movies that I could actually watch without like completely being like frightened out of my mind.
Yeah.
Like I say that I didn't like the Halloween movies really. To me they were kind of, I mean, even then they were kind of dull. Like, and I mean, we'll get to that when we cover that series. I've grown, I appreciate them now, but like as a kid. But I saw the dark humor later on in the original Texas Chainsaw, so that was a different one. But between Freddy and Jason, Jason scared the shit out of me. Like, I mean, I could not watch those movies. I refused to.
So funny.
It took me years before I warmed up, and that's why Part 6 was my favorite, you know, because I was like, I'm going to finally watch these, and that was the one that I started on, and like, you know, got the whole thing rolling. But I watched Freddy way before that because it was the joking that allowed me to ease into those movies and allowed me to actually say, okay, I can watch this because even though it's dark, he's making jokes, you know.
Did you have parents that encouraged you watching scary films at all?
No, they didn't restrict me, nor did they, you know, encourage me either one. Like, anything that I've picked up over my lifetime, pop culture, has been from like either friends, other people, or on my own. Like, my dad was sports 24/7. If it wasn't a sport, there wasn't even movies that my dad watched. Like,
wow,
later on, I would catch him watching like westerns. But like when I was a kid, as soon as he came home, it was whatever ball game was on. He didn't care what the sports was. Didn't care what the team was. Just so he had some sports team on the TV. That was literally what he did. And then my mom, like, she never, like, I remember she watched like some things, but it was more like true crime, that type of stuff, you know. And like, so neither one of them really watched any like major TV shows. So like, you know, like anything that I watched as a kid, Goonies, Back to the Future, that was all me. Like, I was just like, I want to see this. That looks cool, you know. And then like horror movies, that was totally like, I would go to the video store, like my mom would take me there and I'd be like, you know, I'd go over and just grab a, you know, Friday film, or I mean, a Nightmare on Elm Street film, go take it up there, and they would look, and my mom's like, yeah, that's fine, you know, and then I'd take it home and watch it, and that's it. So
I obviously my parents didn't encourage me to watch horror films. In fact, they scared me into not watching them, and did scare me when we did watch them. So I was tormented in that sense. But I don't know, because then the reason why I bring it up is because now, like I said, I've been joking the past quite a few episodes now that we got the kids now that love these films, you know, watch them religiously. They'll pop on the TV and the kids are like, yep, you know, and it's like, but they've never been scared of it. Not like we were. It's a whole different generation of kids. You know, so it's like, I feel like parents back in the day, they didn't have horror, so I can't really necessarily blame them. And they didn't have horror like we have horror. They had universal horror, which was cool. It's classic, you know?
Even if I mean, like our parents would have probably been teenagers in like the late 70s, give or take.
Yeah.
They or somewhere, you know, in the 70s at some point, like they had movies like Rosemary's Baby. That was the type of horror movies they had. And then The Exorcist later on.
They had some pretty dark ones as well, I guess. Yeah. You know, they did. I don't know. I just don't. They were either scared of it or they were weirdos.
The funny thing is that like, my mom talks about it, like when she was pregnant with me, like that she read like, you know, a serial killer's autobiography, or you know, or not autobiographies, but like, you know, books written about serial killers, and that's what and I don't know if that has anything to do with me like being in that genre, like because true crime and like, I mean, serial killers are a different, you know, thing or whatever. You can find some interesting stuff, but just like basic true crime stuff for the most part, I just don't care about. Yeah. But like when it came to horror stuff, I mean, from the very first time I saw Frankenstein, the original, I was like, I'm hooked. I love this shit. Like, you know, and the funny thing was, like, I spent my entire adult life like chasing that high of the scare that I had whenever I was a kid, and like, it's just it's one of those things that like horror fans, you know, the curse and you know of being a horror fan, you get such good scares when you're a child, you never relive, you never get that thrill anymore later on. You're just, I mean, you get kind of dead to it, and that's when movies pop up that actually cause some of that. then that's why they stand out for you. I've heard plenty of people say, I don't know why Smile is so popular. It was stupid to me. It gave me the scare, the
heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, it gave me the chills that I was looking for. I was like, shit, yeah, if you can still do that now, you're 100% in my wheelhouse. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, no, we definitely appreciate it. I will say this, I don't have numb children. I was a good mom and started them off so young that they were terrified at some point in their life, okay? So they didn't escape the terror. They were really little when they started watching horror films. So, but now in their teens, they're pretty numb to it. I mean, even my son, who still gets real scared, even he enjoys a good slasher. So,
I wouldn't say that I probably didn't end up watching any of these movies until I was probably about 10 or 11, but that was actually worse because, like I said, that's the time period, at least for me, when I was having a bunch of nightmares anyways. Just, hormonal stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then, like, these movies made it even worse because they were the most lucid nightmares I've ever had in my life, most vivid ones I've ever had in my life. And these movies were not making it any better at all.
Yeah. Wait, because there's different types of lucid dreaming, but...
I did have lucid dreams during that time period too.
Oh,
yes, but
okay.
they wasn't nightmares necessarily with the lucid dreams because those, when I took control of the dream, they stopped being nightmares.
I was going to ask, were you able to start? Are you able to take control of your dreams?
I've only done that about 2 or 3 times that I'm aware of. One of them was, and I know there's like meanings attached to all these different type of dreams, but one of them I was flying in the dream and like I took total control of it and like was controlling where I was flying to and all that stuff, which was really cool.
Yeah.
One of them I was on like a tropical island. I remember that, like it was so vivid and like it was so relaxing, and it was just it was vivid and lucid at the same time. I was controlling what I was doing, but it was like so vivid, it felt real, like I could feel the sun on my skin in that dream, And then like there was one more where, and this was a really weird one, and you can have your arguments about past lives and all that stuff, but I was an outlaw in the Old West, and I was a kid whenever I dreamed this, so I don't know where this came up from. I was an outlaw in the Old West. They were hanging me. They hung me, and then and then I was still alive, and that's whenever I realized that I was sleeping. Because I didn't feel any pain, so I was just like, and I got really mad, and I'm like, I'm going to kill every one of you for doing this to me. They started shooting me. They tried to set fire to me. I was basically Rasputin. I kept getting back up, and I massacred every single townsfolk in that old western town. And it was just like, and I mean, I was in total control of every person I killed in that dream. So there you go.
Rasputin. Damn. You could write a movie about that. I always have control of my dreams. I rarely don't have control of my dreams. And I'll tell you what, if I don't have a control of my dream, if I can't control what's happening in my dream, I can end my dreams. So I have that. My husband thinks it's the worst thing in the world. He's like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want control? Why would you not want to see where something goes? And I was like, I don't know, because like I don't know, like I'll constantly move around in my dream, constantly go places, constantly see things, whatever. That's fine. I did have one gate that my dog was in my dream, and he would not let me go through the gate. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to me, but not in words. He was communicating to me that I was not ready to go through that door yet. So I remember that dream. Cool. But yeah, there's places I won't go, but it's usually if I'm getting a warning, I'm going to kind of listen and take heed. Maybe I'm not ready. What's behind that door? It may not be something evil. It might be a life experience that I am not ready for yet, or something like that, or death. Who knows? But one time, and I've told you this, it was the worst experience in the world. The only time in, I don't know, decades that I haven't had control of my dream, because I've had control of my dream since I was a child, was when I went to that sleep study. And I was pure evil that entire night, and I didn't sleep, and they swear that not once did they have me on video screaming for help, but they don't recall hearing me screaming for help because they have microphones in our rooms. They didn't ever hear me scream for help, and they said that my heart rate and my brain scans never changed to show that I was under any stress, even though I was clearly screaming for help.
It's interesting.
Interesting. And I was like, okay, then I'm a liar or I made it up. I don't know. But like I had an evil nurse come to me in the dream. That was, I realized she wasn't my nurse, but I couldn't get rid of her. I couldn't end it. So that was the worst night of my life. I did not sleep that night.
Anytime I've ever had a dream that was a really bad nightmare, like something in the dream caused me to slam back awake and it ended that way.
Yeah.
I was also a sleepwalker as a kid.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Did it pretty regularly. One of the weirdest nightmares I ever had as a child before the puberty nightmares that were like crazy was that I dreamed that I walked through the house and I was visualizing everything perfectly as I was walking through the house at the time. And then opened up the front door, stepped out onto the steps. It was still nighttime. It was cold out. I could feel the cold underneath my feet on the concrete, porch or whatever that my parents had. Looked across the road, and in the middle of the road, there was like this ghostly girl who like stared at me and was like, beckoning me to like follow her, and like it frightened me. And then when I woke up, I was standing in the exact same spot, looking the exact same area that I was at in my dream.
Oh, no. No, bueno. Probably would have caused you to walk into like a passing car or something like that.
I don't know, to be honest, but it was like, I mean, it frightened me pretty bad. And I made sure to, beat feet to get back inside the house, back into the bed, and hope to God that ghost girl didn't show up in my room after I saw her. So.
They can't be there unless you invite them.
But yeah, I had that experience, and I mean, it was pretty regularly known that I, like my parents talked about it several times. I'd be walking through the house, like eyes kind of fluttered back in my head, and I'd be mumbling things that I was saying in my dreams.
Fucking weird.
And they knew that I was, and they were just like, go back to bed, and I'd go and I would listen to them and just go back into the bedroom and go back to sleep.
Like a fucking robot or a zombie. Dreams would be fucking crazy. I tell you what, like I said, I'll never forget I'll never forget that sleep study. I hope I forget that sleep study. That was horrific. Maybe it's not fair. Maybe it's not fair that I've always had control of my dreams, and one time I didn't. I even had sleep paralysis. I never have sleep paralysis more than a few seconds that I can't get myself out of it. And this was like, I can't fucking move.
I've never had sleep paralysis because obviously sleepwalking is the opposite.
Oh,
of that,
yeah.
But I have had moments in my sleep, and these are really scary, where like you can tell like in reality that like your sleep apnea or what the position you're in, like you're not breathing because in my dream I start like I can't get a breath in my dream.
Yes.
But then I also can't move. I know I'm asleep at that point, but I also and I know in my mind I have to wake up so I can get a breath of air, but I can't stop the dream. I can't wake up. I can't even move. Like my body is just and I think that's the way they describe sleep paralysis.
Oh yeah,
you're just tied to the bed. You can't even move at that point.
Mm-hmm. No, that's definitely it. It literally feels like that's why they came up with that whole theory that it's little tiny demons tying you up and holding you down, while you're having sleep paralysis. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not buying that, but it definitely feels like it.
Yeah, so. It's those have been pretty scary occurrences when that happened.
Yeah, that's definitely, especially if you think you're gonna die. Have you died in your dreams ever?
Have I died in my dreams?
Yeah. That you can recall?
No, other than that one lucid dream where, I mean, I've anytime that I'm about to die in a dream, like I wake up.
Okay, I've died in my dreams before. I hear that's not common. I hear, but I don't know how many people fucking talk about their dreams. But yeah, I've seen myself die in my dream, and then like that's a weird experience. It's sad because you're like you watched yourself die, and then you're like, oh fuck, what do I do now? What the fuck am I gonna do? Well, you're dead, so I don't know what you're gonna do. You better figure it out.
It's kind of funny we're circling back to what we was talking about with the scary movies as a kid, because I mean, I was watching these 80s movies in like the early 90s because that was about the time period I would have been, watching these.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing is like, although my parents didn't contribute whatsoever to me watching these scary movies, my aunts, both my mom's sister and then my uncle, my dad's side's wife at the time, contributed to me having like some of the worst dreams or nightmares I've ever had, because one showed me Cujo.
Good boy, Cujo.
That was my mom's sister, and then my uncle's wife at the time on my dad's side showed us Pet Cemetery.
Both films, which will be reviewed on When Bad Animals Go Bad.
Or the King retrospective, whichever one we do first. But yeah, it's both of those movies. And that's why, I mean, now it was my own fault. I watched that on TV while that was it came on ABC. That was my own fault for watching that.
That's definitely nightmare inducing.
But yes, those two movies were because my aunt showed them to me, and I had horrible nightmares after the fact. But that's what aunts are good for. They show you the shit like that, and then they let your parents deal with it.
Oh yeah, you got, and God bless them, you know. Anyways,
but yeah, dreams are a weird thing, and good on Wes Craven for like throwing all this stuff together and creating, like, I mean, it just fits to have a slasher that, you know, like Freddy, that can attack you in your dreams. That's just like a perfect setup for a movie.
Yeah, he definitely cashed in on it. So
anything else we want to say about this first trilogy before we wrap it up on this one? The next time just so everybody knows, we will skip this and probably hit a few of the Leprechaun movies just to cash in on the fact that it is, you know, St. Patty's Day this month in March. But then we'll probably come back to the series after that and move on to the next three, which Dream Master is pretty decent. Dream Child is pretty terrible. And 6 has its funner moments, but it's ultimately a pretty shitty movie. So that's going to be a rough trilogy to watch. Anything else you want to say about anything of these?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think I've already kind of said it. I'm kind of glad that I got to witness one of the movies that I have not watched yet, which was The Gayest of All. I don't know how I missed that one. And now I'm even more excited to catch up. I think I've seen the one or a few of the remaining films. So we'll figure that out as we get to those movies. But you know, classic slasher. Freddy is up there with the classics for sure.
We get a dumbed down version in part 6 of the tendon scene in this one, where Freddy is controlling somebody using, I think it might even be a young Breckenmeyer, with a Nintendo joystick. Oh,
that's hella funny.
And he's like, and then his line in that is, "Now you're playing with power," you know.
Shut up. Oh my God, he is so dorky.
I'm telling you, this is the tipping point. It starts getting way worse when it comes to the puns.
Yeah.
Anyways, as far as plugs, we've got the Lean Into It from the Blue Collar guys, Blue Collar BS. Anything that they're still doing their Sunday night shindigs, I imagine. Yeah,
they're doing their Sunday nights. They are eventually going to switch to Friday nights again, like they used to be. Again, Lean Into It. It looks like Leanne to it. Leanne number 2, it, whatever. That's their thing. And they do live shows. You can actually watch. You can actually call in. Tell them to shut up, give your input, whatever you want to do, really. But it is Sunday nights, and I mean, depending on where you're listening from, I don't know what time it is. All I know in California is it starts at 8 p.m. So do with that information.
Would be 11 o'clock Eastern time.
Exactly. And who knows what time elsewhere in the world for all you worldly listeners that are keeping us on the charts, the Apple charts. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Yeah, we very much appreciate every listener that we have. Yeah. Sure.
So interesting to say the least. But anyways, that's about it. Nothing too interesting.
All right. Well, with that, peace be with you.
And with your spirit.